You are known and you are seen by God. You are loved beyond anything you could possibly fully understand, ask, or imagine. And because of like who God has made you to be, you're created in the imago Dei, the image of God. You have infinite value and infinite worth. He's saying, "Hey, I'm hearing the cries of my people. I'm seeing the way that they're being treated." And God's basically saying, like, if you're wondering if I'm like gonna do something about it, oh, I'm coming down. I'm doing
Hmm.
something about it. And then he like flips the script on Moses and he goes, "So now get up and go. I'm sending you." And I feel like with things like trafficking, it's like there have been trafficking victims that have said, after they've been rescued, they've said things that are like chilling to hear, like, "Where were you? Like, why didn't you come sooner? Why didn't you like where were the good people when all the bad people were doing these things to me?" And so I feel like it's a word, like, hey, God sees, he hears, he's concerned.
Hey guys, it's Josiah Kennelly. This is the Young Adults Today podcast. And on today's conversation, my wife Micah and I are joined by one of our best friends, Brent Silkey. Brent is the founder of 30 for Freedom. Check out this video that shows a little bit about the Great World Race, which features 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 consecutive days. Brent is going to be running not only 30 for Freedom as a movement and not only 30 miles in a single day, also he's running the Great World Race. Check out this video to see a little bit more about fighting human trafficking and how we all can get involved.
My name is Brent Silkey. I heard about sex trafficking when I was a college student. I was devastated to learn what was taking place in our world. And it was happening everywhere. God put a dream in my heart when I turned 30 years old to run 30 miles with 30 friends so we could raise $30,000 to rescue people out of sex trafficking. I was blown away when 123 people showed up on my 30th birthday. And our goal of 30,000, God exceedingly and abundantly blew us out of the water as $81,346 came in. It was one of the craziest days of my life. And it was actually on the news that evening. And as it was on the news, people all over the Twin Cities in Minnesota heard about the issue of trafficking and they wanted to make a difference. So my phone blew up the next week and people continued to say, we want to be a part of this thing. And so the next year, on my 31st birthday, we had 400 people show up. And it's just been this thing where 30 for Freedom went from a run on a 30th birthday to becoming a movement. Over the last 9 years, we've seen 15,000 runners, and we've seen over $2.5 million raised. And we give 100% of every single donation directly to the cause. What's the cause? Sex trafficking prevention, rescue operations, and survivor care. We support 3 organizations with those funds: Venture, Project Rescue, and Free International. We have 17 different chapter locations, in-person runs, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, 30-mile ultra marathons, so that people can move from comfortable to less comfortable, joining the 30 for Freedom movement to set the captive free. 2025 is our 10th year of 30 for Freedom. We want to take the message of freedom around the world. There's an event called the Great World Race. 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. And we have the opportunity to be a part as 30 for Freedom of the Great World Race. There's going to be a couple of us who are going to be running, and we're going to help take the message of freedom around the world. We want to make the greatest possible awareness campaign in our history, and we actually want to raise more money and make a greater impact than ever before. We have impact taking place in Minnesota, Indiana, Utah, Wisconsin, all over the United States. And as we look toward November of 2025 in the Great World Race, we're making our miles matter, and we're inviting you along for the journey.
You've also got to get in the room March 7th and 8th for the Young Adults Today Leader Conference. Leaders from all over the US and Canada are joining us in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Check out this special invitation.
Hey everybody, this is Micah with Young Adults Today. We want to invite you to the March 7th through 8th Minneapolis, Minnesota Young Adults Today Leaders Conference held at the North House. This will be an amazing opportunity for you to meet new friends, be encouraged, hear from speakers, experience worship, meet maybe your next best friend, but we just want to encourage you to get signed up. So if you're a leader and you're leading 18 to 30-year-olds anywhere throughout the U.S., maybe specifically in the Midwest or the Minnesota area, we want to extend an invitation to you where you can just come and experience community. You can and experience worship, hear from some speakers, have some table time and table talk with amazing people. We can't wait to see you. You can sign up at youngadults.today/conference. Again, that's youngadults.today/conference.
Today's episode is presented by our sponsors at GFA World. They offer a paid apprentice program. You can check out a little bit more with this program.
It's one small step for man,
Neil Armstrong sets foot on the moon.
one giant leap for mankind.
Sometimes one small step can lead to a giant leap. If you have a call to change the world for Christ, GFA World invites you to their ministry apprenticeship program. Take one small step. Log on to gfa.org/apprenticeship. Go to gfa.org/apprenticeship.
Let's dive deep into this conversation with Brent Silkey on the Young Adults Today podcast.
Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to the Young Adults Today podcast. I'm Micah.
I'm Josiah Keneally. This is the Young Adults Today podcast. Man, we're excited to have you tune in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We drop a new episode every Monday. We're celebrating 300 strong episodes, and there's a lot going on in your life as the listener that God is moving. There's so many young adult ministries starting, that there's so many that are relaunching. And 2025 really is a year that we believe that revival is happening, that awakening is happening. And do you sense a hunger in young adults, babe?
100%. I think the young adults that we've been able to serve or the young adults that we come across, even just down the street or we're randomly in a different state, it's just they are ready for truth. They're ready to be fed and they're asking the question, what about us? Like, where is the place for me in church? Where am I going to get asked to participate? What can I get my hands in? How can I use my time, my talents, my treasures? And some of these are non-Christians that are verbalizing this, just seeking truth and some form of breakthrough in their personal life. And they've tried everything else in the world. So I feel like they're turning to the one true God that can radically transform them and utilize them for God's kingdom. So it's been an honor.
Today is a special episode. Our guest is a returning guest, and today is really for you if you are looking to mobilize young adults for Christ in your community, to fight the horrors of sex trafficking. If you are looking to make a difference in this world, maybe you're on a college campus, maybe you're in a local church. Today, if you want to make a difference, if you know young adults that want to make a difference, Brent Silkey is our guest. Brent, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's an honor to be with you. To be back.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and we know that you are passionate about this topic of human trafficking and restoration and just the healing powers of God through whoever story comes through, whether it's the team going in, whether it's a person that's being rescued, whether it's the person who's running and raising money for awareness. We know that God's definitely put this on your heart, your family's heart. So for somebody tuning in for the very first time, can you just share with us, where did this passion come from and why is it important?
Yeah, in 2005, I was talking with this young lady named Elizabeth Millsaps, and she told me about sex trafficking. And I was like, how can that be a thing? Like, how can people do that to other people and exploit people and do it for essentially for selfish gain and greed? And I was wrestling with, like, could that really be a thing? And I went to chapel at North Central University as a 19-year-old. And I heard Dr. David Grant, the co-founder of Project Rescue, get up and share about little girls in India and just the things that they were going through, the things as they were trafficked in the brothels, the red light districts. And I just remember sitting there squirming in my seat thinking, dear Lord, like, what could be done to be helpful to these people, to rescue them, to provide a different life, you know what I mean, to protect the vulnerable. And so I remember sitting there and thinking, like, I've got like $300 in my bank account. That's probably like tops at the time. So I could give some of that. I know I can pray, but I felt like there was more to do, but I didn't know what to do. And so I kind of sat with that kind of just kind of stewing in the crock pot of my heart for the next about 10 years. And right before I turned 30, I felt like I had read these books about people who, when they turned 30, ran 30 miles. My friend Justin Cruz ran 30 miles on his 30th birthday in January. And so I was thinking, well, what if I ran 30 miles on my 30th birthday? What if I invited 30 friends to come and run? And what if we could raise $30,000 to rescue people out of sex trafficking? Because we learned that every 30 seconds someone becomes a victim. And so with all of those things coming together, going out to breakfast with Yoel Oliva, the grandson of MLB Hall of Famer Tony Oliva, and I told him my dream, and he slides $100 bill across the table at Perkins, and he says, "Hey, I hear about trafficking all over the place. We got to do something to end it." And he slides it across. And so he puts his money where my mouth is. I go out to my car. It is freezing cold, December 28th, 2015. And I send a message to Pastor Mark Dean of the Minnesota Student Ministries at the time and to Paul Herkman from Venture. And I said, "Hey, is there a way we can collaborate and work together so that we can, run 30 miles on May 28th, 2016 to raise $30,000?" And they both said yes. And so for the next several, 5 months, I was asking people, Josiah, you're one of the first people I sent a message to, like, "Hey, bro, you want to run 30 miles with me?" And you've always been down to do crazy stuff for God.
For
And so
sure.
you were one of the first people to say yes. Mike and Mac, some of those people, Dave Ritter, Dan Scally. And so it's been really cool to see. On my 30th birthday, then it was, 123 of us that showed up to run. We had 75 do a 5K for freedom. We had 48 that ran 30 miles for freedom. And the craziest part of it all is at the end of the day, we'd seen $81,346 raised for freedom. And it was just like, whoa, God, you are doing something far beyond what we ever dreamed or could have asked for or imagined.
Brent, I do believe that Mike and I, we've had a little bit of a front row seat because we're in. We're in
Hmm.
it to end it. And thanks for your leadership, your vision, your dream. And I think when God gives us a dream, it's for his glory and other
Mhm.
people's benefit. And that's certainly the
Wow.
case with 30 for Freedom. That's certainly the case with ending human trafficking. This is a horror. This is a terrible thing. And we could all agree that from any faith background, from any
Yeah.
background, any walk of life, I think people can all rally around doing good in the world,
Hmm.
good in the name of God, and let there be freedom for those who are in captive. That sounds a lot
Mm.
like the prophecy of Isaiah and the teachings of Jesus. And now
Mm.
we're 10 years in, or just shy, coming up soon,
Coming
right?
up. Yeah.
On 10 years. And I don't want to steal the thunder, so re-say it in your own words, but God's
Mm.
put more in store, a new vision. There's been how much raised so far these 9 years?
Yeah, so in the first 9 years, we've seen over 15,000 people make their miles matter with 30 for Freedom, over $2.5 million raised. And it's just been one of those things where each year, as God drops a new vision about what this can look like, it seems like there are people saying, "Hey, can we do this over here? And
Mhm.
could we do 30 for Freedom in our city? Could we do this in our town?" We got to partner up with Grandma's Marathon in 2024 as one of the charity partners. And they let us know that we were the largest charity partner at Grandma's Marathon, which is the top 10 marathon in the country. And so in our first year, which was crazy, we had 109 people running for freedom last year. We're exceeding 135 right now for 2025 Grandma's Marathon. And I don't know, it's just like there's just like this cascading effect of when people hear about it, they want to do something about it. Now they're going to run, now they're going to raise funds, they're going to raise awareness. And as it's gone on the last 9 years, it's been wild to see. And so our hope and vision for 2025 is that we would actually add 5 new states to
Yep.
30 for Freedom.
Yep.
There's some stuff coming up even for 2026 that's not quite shareable yet, but there are some big, big things taking place. And our goal this year is actually to raise $1 million for freedom. And
Yep.
one thing, just for the listener to know, if they're not familiar with 30 for Freedom, we have 100% promise for our donations that come in, that we give 100% of every donation directly to the cause. And so we can talk about those partners and what the cause looks like, but it's a very important thing for people to know. Like when you're giving to 30 for Freedom, if you give $100, we're not taking any of that for ourselves. We're literally giving that completely to the cause. Trafficking prevention, rescue operations, and survivor care.
Oh my goodness. 30 for Freedom is the name of the movement. You could visit 30forfreedom.org. And you know what, Brent, real quick, you just said three really important things. If we can drill
Mm.
down on each of those, I think you said prevention,
Yep.
restoration, and then
And
ongoing care.
rescue.
Rescue. Okay.
Yep.
Can you break that down?
Yeah. One of the things that one of our partners is Venture. So our three partners are Venture, Project Rescue, and Free International. And as I've talked with our different partners, just one of the things that happens a lot is there are people who are taken from or coerced from their village, or they're manipulated in such a way where someone will come through the village and they'll be wearing nice clothes and they'll say, hey, it looks really like things are really hard here. It looks like your family's hungry. We have a great opportunity for you to go to school and to be a nanny over in our country here. So if you just come across the border, we'll take care of you and you can send some of the money that you're making back to your village. It will be a great thing for you for education. It'll be a great thing for your family. And so these young girls are like, oh, that sounds amazing. That would be really a blessing. And so they get to the border and the checkpoints there. And of course, the traffickers aren't going to walk with them across the border or drive them across the border because they'd be stopped. So they send them across alone. And so some of our partners actually have at the border crossing stations, they actually have staffed people who are there, like a social worker and a former victim of trafficking who's now a survivor. And they'll intercept these young ladies and they'll say, hey, so what's going on? And they'll tell them the story. And then the survivor will actually say, and they're probably promised you this, 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 and this. And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? And then she's like, and then she'll share her story as a survivor. And she'll say, there's a different way, there's a different place you can go. We can get you to safety right now. And so they intercept on average 100 girls per station every year. And so that's the best case scenario, that someone wouldn't have to endure even a second of the horrific nightmare of trafficking.
Yeah.
So that's prevention.
Yeah.
Rescue operations. This actually looks different. I get a lot of questions on the rescue operations, especially from people who are maybe they've been in the military and they're like, hey, I want to put my skills to use. So in every country and every context, it looks different. A lot of the things that take place overseas, it might be out of a brothel, it might be out of the red light district, that kind of a thing. In the United States, it might be something, it's a lot less like in your face and it's a lot more subtle. And so the rescue actually has to look different, coordinating with different law enforcement agencies and things like that. I think of our partners Free International based in Las Vegas.
Yep.
And the rescues that take place there, like literally out of like high-end hotel rooms where people are being trafficked and they rescue them out. And then, the ongoing survivor care. There's so much to unpack about that. And it's a multi-year process. But I think one of the most beautiful things that I've seen in the last 6 months, it was a video of this young lady in a hair salon. And she is, clearly loving doing what she's doing in the hair salon. And so you see this young lady doing someone's hair, and her story comes on the screen, and it says her name, which is probably a pseudonym for her identity and protection. And it talks about how she was trafficked, how she was rescued, how she went through this incredible process of restoration by the grace of God. She learned that she loved to do hair, so now she became a cosmetologist, and she's employed at a salon that employs survivors of sex trafficking. And I saw this video and I stopped in my tracks and I was like, this is why we do what we do. This is why we exist as 30 for Freedom, so that more stories like this young lady can be a reality. And so it's prevention, rescue, and just the restoration aspect of 30 for Freedom.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. It's vital work. It's important work. It's the Lord's work. And Brent, 2026, right? Or is it's 2025, November?
Yeah.
Okay. So 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. A marathon is 26.2 miles. You're going to do 7 marathons in 7 days consecutive on 7 continents, the Great World Race. Talk about that. That's wild.
Yeah. It is wild. It's crazy. So in probably like 2014, I'm coming out of the Twin Cities Marathon Expo, and this guy is walking in with a box. And I saw his shirt, and it said 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. And I was like, that's crazy, man. He goes, hey, bro. And he throws me a shirt. And I get the shirt, and I'm like, well, I can't wear this until I do this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Runners are superstitious sometimes about wearing stuff that we haven't done yet. But he throws me this shirt, but it kind of planted a seed in my heart. I was like, well, that would be nuts. So I looked it up online and I was like, oh, that is not affordable for any normal human being. So it was something that I kind of shelved for a while. But Josiah, you and I have talked about this many times. And you've been the guy that's believed in the dream before I believed in the dream. And I remember sitting in my driveway and you were like, Brent, this is happening. This is totally going to happen. It's God's dream. It's going to be on God's bill. And you're like, and it's going to be a documentary on Netflix. Like, you spoke all those things. And I was like, man, I don't even know, Josiah. I don't know how it's going to happen. And so I was actually having a conversation with one of our 30 for Freedom chapter sponsors from Central Minnesota, Jeremy Wilner, Carson Wealth Management, amazing guy. And he was asking for updates, and I was like, man, I was like, told him about Grandma's Marathon, and I told him, I said, there is an event called the Great World Race, 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 days. And I said, I someday would love to run that race for freedom and bring the message of freedom literally around the
Hmm.
world
Hmm.
to take this global issue and give global exposure to it. And he goes, oh my word. He goes, that's amazing. That's first of all crazy. And that's amazing. And he's like, if you ever do that, like I'd help you fund it. And I was like, what? Like,
Do you
well,
know the
like, and just
bill?
for, I'm like, it's, yeah. And we talked about it. I said, if it's about $50,000 to enter. And he's like, okay. So as we talked about it more, he, at the end of the year was like, hey, I really want to help make a difference for this. He's like, he and his wife Janine, they're like, it's so important to us to end human trafficking in our
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah.
And so they have become my primary sponsors for the Great World Race. They're literally paying for me to go. We've had some other really great sponsors. Some of them are businesses, some of them are local churches,
Yep.
who have got behind and said, hey, whatever you need, whatever gear you need, whatever plane tickets you need, like we want to help provide it. And so I just feel like this is the craziest thing, but it's happening in November 2025. And one of the sponsors I was talking to said, well, who's your team? Who are you doing this with? And I was like, oh, team. I didn't even think of a team. Like I keep thinking about this $50,000 price tag for entry. And so I talked to one of the most inspirational runners on the planet. Her name's Jackie Hunt Broersma. She's based out of Arizona. She had cancer. She lost part of her leg. So she runs with a running blade on one
Oh my
leg.
gosh.
Wow.
And she has done some crazy stuff. So, three crazy things that Jackie's done. She ran a marathon every day for 104 days in a row and broke the world record at the time
Wow.
on her running blade.
Wow.
The second thing she did is she ran a half marathon every day for 250 days in a row. And then she ran a 100 miler on a treadmill in under 24 hours and broke the world record for that as well as for someone running with a blade. And so she's someone that I'm just like, you are incredible. She's turning 50 this year. And so I reached out to her on Instagram and I said, hey, Jackie, would you ever consider doing something crazy like the Great World Race? And she goes, oh, everyone wants to do that, but who can afford it? I was like, right. So I said, if you had a sponsor that covered your entry, would you ever run it on behalf of a nonprofit like 30 for Freedom? She's like, absolutely, I would. So one of our sponsors is like, are you kidding me? They're like, we Googled her. ESPN articles came up about her. We want her to be a part of this. So Jackie's on the team. There's a young lady from Rochester, Ellie, who's going to be doing this as well. She helped start the Rochester chapter in Minnesota last year, and they had raised $78,000 in their first year for 30 for Freedom. So she's
Incredible.
doing the half marathon version of the Great World Race. And then our friend Phil Johnson, the district youth director of Minnesota, he goes, Brent, if you're going to do this and want to make the maximum impact, you have to video this. You have to get this documented. He goes, I have a guy that would be amazing. He loves to travel. He's really great getting high quality stuff out really fast. His name's Ben Heggie with Ben Heggie Media. And so through the generosity of some really amazing people, Ben is also going to be, so there's four of us right now, and there's one more we're waiting to hear back from if he's in or not, but it could be up to five of us that are going to be a part of this together for freedom. So it's crazy. It's happening, and I can't believe it, but I'm so thankful. And Josiah, thanks for believing in the dream before I believed in it, man. Appreciate you.
We'll subscribe to your channel and your Netflix documentary.
Let's go. Let's go.
Whatever can happen. Oh, it's too fun. I love it. Well, this is definitely a testimony of what God can do. So even just for our listeners today, if they're pastors, if they're leaders, like we need to think bigger, dream bigger, not do more, but trust that God has more for us and to
Mm.
leave our hands open. And one thing that we really, Josiah and I, when God gives us a dream, we have to think through who we share that dream with. We have to think through who we're on-ramping onto our prayer team. If there's an exit of something and an entrance of a new season, or there's an addition to something in the current season that we're in, it's important to have the teams or the friends to process all those things with, because I know for my God, when God has spoken things to me, he's specifically said, don't have a Joseph moment. Like if I've
Mm,
literally had a dream about something in my future, Joseph had a dream. And what did he do? He shared it, I believe, out of turn to his brothers. All of this,
mm,
you guys are going to bow to me like the wheat in the field, right? And then he ended up getting sold into slavery. So I think
right.
through dreams like that, I'm like, okay, who am I sharing my dreams with? Who believes in me? And who
Mm,
can like spur me on and spar me on in the process? So can you just share, Brent, maybe some of the friendships, or how do you process dreams? I know you have an amazing wife that you help,
mhm,
probably she probably gets all these downloads obviously first, but how would you encourage maybe the person listening who has a God-sized dream, who
mm.
doesn't have the friends or needs to start inviting friends into that process and not hold that dream so tight that it doesn't even happen?
Oh, so good, Micah. I was just talking to a leader last week who has this dream is absolutely like amazing, but they've been holding on to it for a long time, being really careful who they share it with. And so I can appreciate the question and where you're coming from, even just thinking about that recent conversation. I think you got to be prayerful and you got to be careful who you share those dreams with in the early stages, because when you share something early stage, it's vulnerable. It hasn't been tried and true. It hasn't been battle tested yet. And so if you share it with someone who's just like this pessimistic, cynical person, like, that could never happen, they can like step on it and like squish the dream. And then you
Mm-hmm.
maybe are gun shy to ever share it again. But if you're prayerful and careful about who you share your dreams with, and it's like, hey, this is my most trusted friend. This is my friend who's gonna like shoot me straight. This is my friend who's gonna like help me, like even maybe dream bigger. And so for me in my life, right, I obviously talking to my wife, and we're processing and planning and doing all those things together. And then like my very next like ring in this concentric circles is Josiah. Is like, hey man, like this is crazy. What do you think? And like Josiah, you speak life, you speak faith, into these things. And if I'm out of line, you have the authority to like tell me like, bro, stop. You know what I mean? Like, but you're a safe person. And so it's easy for me to be prayerful and careful and share dreams with you. Micah McDonald, same kind of thing. And so I think for the listener who has this God-sized dream, I wouldn't just go willy-nilly posting it on social media. If it's truly a God-sized dream, I would be careful and I would be prayerful and say, hey, okay, who can I entrust this to? A mentor, a pastor, a leader, someone else who's done something similar in their field, or another dreamer. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen, I see him all over Reels and TikTok, but Simon Squibb, I think is his name. He
Wow.
literally goes up to people and he goes, hey, excuse me, what's your dream? And they literally asking people like on camera, like, what's your dream? And I
Beautiful.
think that's really fun. And I love he's giving people his book and telling them like how they can like live out their dream and stuff. But I think for the most part, when it's a God dream, man, you like protect that inner circle of people, because over time, as people are speaking into it and helping to refine it, like Mikey, you said, like yeah, sparring, even like going back and forth a little bit on stuff, that can become so much of a better thing. And as God continues to speak into it, it can become something way more beautiful and even grander than you could ever have
Mm-hmm.
dreamed on your own when you have the right people speaking into it. So I love that. I love that question. And yeah, for the listener, just be prayerful and careful who you share it with in the early stages. Continue to be seeking the Lord about it. And when it's time, don't be afraid to go and do it.
I love it. That's
My
so good.
gosh, that first step,
Yep.
Brent, in my life, I think a lot of times the first step is, of course, prayer. And then honestly, it's like, talk to you. For
Mm,
me, in my life, it's yes, talk to my wife, talk to you, talk to Micah Mack, that inner
mm,
circle. And then maybe talk to a Pastor Nate Roosh, talk to somebody who's fluent in the language
yeah.
of vision and dreams.
Mm,
And
so good.
my prayer for the listener is that God would illuminate a couple people who speak dreams and visions. What's
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
interesting, going back to Joseph, Joseph was able to interpret dreams. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have a crazy dream at night, or more of a daydream, like a vision during the day, something we see that could be done or should be done. But we need maybe somebody to interpret it. Help me
mm,
discern. Can I borrow some discernment? And that process is so beautiful in community.
Yeah.
And Brent,
mm.
there is a dream of yours to see $1 million raised for that prevention, rescue, and restoration care through 30 for Freedom. There's a link that you can give at 30forfreedom.org. It's in the show notes. There's also leaders from across the US and beyond, Canada, New Zealand, Australia,
Mm.
some other countries as well. But you have a goal of seeing 5 new chapters just this year. And
Yeah.
there's time in 2025. It's the recording and release of this episode. But those 5 at minimum, there is 5 or more future chapter leaders
Mm.
in churches in Atlanta, Georgia, Irvine, California, Texas, Arizona, and other places. I'm thinking of leaders who subscribe and listen and watch to
Mm-hmm.
this podcast
Mm.
that they're like, man, there's hundreds of young adults that
Mm-hmm.
could rally behind the heart of Christ
Mm-hmm.
and just the need
Mm.
that we can do something, we can give and we can run, we can make our miles matter to raise funds and awareness. But talk to that person who's a young adult pastor who's like, man, we've got volunteers, we've got
Mm.
runners, we've got small groups, we've got a young adult ministry on Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night. In our state, I think of Spokane, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
that they've
Mm.
got a young adult collective. I'm just thinking of so many people tuning in right now that could totally launch a chapter. And people like 30 for Freedom and Jeremy and the team of Paul and Ryan and others, like they're dream makers.
Yeah.
There's a process that new chapters could be started. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that too. That's a very generous question, Josiah. If there are people who are wanting to start a 30 for Freedom chapter, the first piece of recommendation, the recommendation I would have is if you can come to an existing chapter and
Yeah.
see
Yes.
what 30 for Freedom is all about, because it's one thing to hear about it, it's a whole other thing to experience it and to see like, oh, that's what they mean by, this and that kind of thing. So if it's possible, if someone can be at one of our chapters, they're all listed on our website. If someone can't be, and they're like, "Hey, I'd love to help fight human trafficking in my area. I'd love to help get behind Venture Project Rescue Free International. I'd love to do that." We have a facility where we could host it. We have a place around here where we can get permits if necessary for big cities. It's really cool. During the pandemic when everything was shut down, our executive board spent 9 months developing basically a playbook to how do you start a chapter for 30 for Freedom.
Wow.
That has now morphed from 2020 to 2025 into this amazing interactive document where if someone wants to start a chapter and they email info@30forfreedom.org and they're like, hey, I want to start a chapter in Spokane, Washington, our team can reach out and we're ready to scale. Like we're ready to go. I mean, we went from like 5 chapters to like 11 chapters, 13, last year 17, plus Grandma's Marathon. And so the team is ready to roll, they're ready to go. And so if they wanted to do that, the team can our team can be very hands-on involved in like walking through the process. And it's really cool to see actually, because it's been so well developed, the process, that it's like people are like, wow, this is really great. Like we actually know every single step we need to take. We know the time frames of when the steps need to be executed, and we've got a team of people that got our back to help walk us through the process. So info@30forfreedom.org. People can send us a message there. They can contact us on 30forfreedom.org on our website as well. But yeah, we'd love to talk. We'd love to just dream together and see. Ultimately, the dream is that we could have representation in every single state in the country.
Hmm.
That it would be like USA for freedom kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Love it.
It's incredible. We believe in 30 for Freedom so much. This isn't like an ad. This isn't like, hey,
mm,
this is like we give to 30 for Freedom. We
mm.
run.
Mm-hmm.
I think at least of the offer distances, Brent, I think I've ran all the
You
distances
ran every leg.
in different
Well, and
years.
last year you did all of them
Yeah, that's right. That was the
consecutively.
training. That was the
Yeah.
training. Yeah, for sure. So, I just think that like consider it. Think about it.
Mm.
Like we're gonna pause and play a video of last year's chapter of 30 for Freedom. Check this out.
Mhm.
So we'll insert that there, Brent.
So good.
Really excited about everything. And any other thoughts, dreams, ways that people could get involved? Like every chapter, there's runners, there is volunteers that are like doing the different
stations.
Yeah, water
Yeah.
stations,
Yeah.
Gatorade, bananas, that kind of stuff. And then people can give other thoughts.
Yeah. One thing that's new this year is with just kind of the proliferation of like different places and different chapters and different sponsorships. We actually have what's called the local sponsorship. So, like, let's say if you're the Twin Cities chapter, you can have a certain, there's three different levels or tiers of giving that can happen for a sponsorship locally. And the company, gets on the back of the shirt for that location. And then we have a new system called global sponsorships. And what that means is if someone gives, at the different amounts that are listed there on our website, they can actually get their logo on everyone's shirt for all of 30 for Freedom across all the different states and chapters. And so that's 30forfreedom.org/sponsor. And so, yeah, so that's one way people can get involved. And then I think the other thing to know is that we love, and we are, like, our whole movement is based upon the power of people who are passionate about this and who want to join forces. So volunteers play a huge part in that. And every volunteer who signs up by the t-shirt registration deadline, and if you're like, what's the t-shirt registration deadline? Whatever the chapter date is for your location, it's 30 days before that. They get actually we don't obviously charge volunteers to volunteer at 30 for Freedom, but if they register by that t-shirt deadline, they get their own special 30 for Freedom volunteer shirt, which is really cool. And the thing that's crazy is I see people wearing these shirts like throughout the year. It's kind of a
I
cool
know.
thing to see, like, hey, you did 30 for Freedom. Thanks for being a part. And so, yeah, so sponsors, volunteers, that's a big thing. And then if anyone wants to run, be a part of that. And then there have been also people who said, hey, how can I like make the greatest possible impact of giving? One of the dreams that we have this year is I'm looking to basically, as far as matching funds go from different businesses and corporations, I'm looking for $250,000 of matching sponsorships. My personal goal, because I don't want to ever ask, as Pastor Roger Lane trained us, you never ask people to do what you're not yourself willing to do. My personal goal is to raise $100,000 for 30 for Freedom this year between my 30-mile run, between the Great World Race, and the different things that we have coming up. And so, yeah, it's gonna be a big year, but I really believe that God's in it. And there's some things that are taking place at the second half of the year that I'm just believing the Lord for some really big things in terms of freedom.
I love that. And we also know that you're passionate about not only this topic of hope and justice, but you've incorporated that into another form of ministry that you're a part of, which is called Chi
Mm.
Alpha. How has that evolved throughout the years? And how have the campus and the young adults captured the heart of hope and justice, like at large?
So good. So, kind of a crazy thing. We had a news story that came out a number of years ago about like a trafficking thing that took place that was impacting people that I know. And so, as that happened, we had students who were like, we got to do something about this. And so, we introduced 30 for Freedom in the springtime to our students who want to participate. We've had so many students do 30 miles, half marathon, 10K, 5K, volunteer. And so and it's really cool, like when they get to like be there, it's like two worlds colliding, right? It's like the Chi Alpha side of campus ministry colliding with the biblical justice side of 30 for Freedom. And this is something that's actually in process right now. There's a triathlon club that's starting at St. Thomas. And you
Oh,
guys know I love triathlon stuff. Like I got my little triathlon stuff over here. And I reached out to them on Instagram. I said, "Hey, this is awesome. If there's ever anything I can do to like be helpful to you guys." I said I did Ironman Wisconsin. They're like, "Oh, we'd love to have an Ironman come and share." So like next month, I'm going to be sharing with the triathlon club, and the president or the person who's leading the way for this club is a strong believer. So we sat down for a meeting last semester, and he goes, "Tell me your testimony. Like, tell me about what God's done in your life." And I was like,
Wow.
"Let's go." He's 18. He's a freshman. He's like changing the world. And so I can't wait for that. But yeah, there's been really cool stuff taking place on campus where people just like as soon as you're aware of something, you're like, what can I do? And at 30 for Freedom, we try to provide handles for people to grab on, saying, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to
yeah.
run. I'm going to raise awareness. I'm going to raise funds. I'm going to make a difference.
Amen. So good.
I've never seen anything quite like 30 for Freedom
Mm,
and the way that college students from across the state of Minnesota and far beyond,
mm,
young adults from lots of different churches and communities have something to rally around where
Hmm.
mm.
there's such a tangible difference to be made. And you know what? I think it's been something that God's used in my own life to, Lord willing, make a difference and serve and add value. But when we do that, there's something that happens in, at least from my experience, my own soul. And the college students, young adults, participants, volunteers that we talk to, it does something in us and through us as well. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think of Exodus chapter 3, where Moses is, tending his flock in Midian, and he sees a burning bush, and he immediately understands as soon as he hears the voice of the Lord, like, take off your sandals. He bows down, and God is speaking something that I think is really important for the listener to hear. He's saying, hey, I'm hearing the cries of my people. I'm seeing the way that they're being treated. And God's basically saying, like, if you're wondering if I'm like gonna do something about it, oh, I'm coming down. I'm doing something about it. And then he like flips the script on Moses and he goes, so now get up and go. I'm sending you. And I feel like with things like trafficking, it's like there have been trafficking victims that have said, after they've been rescued, they've said things that are like chilling to hear, like, where were you? Like, why didn't you come sooner? Why didn't you like where were the good people when all the bad people were doing these things to me? And so I feel like it's a word, like, hey, God sees, he hears, he's concerned, and he's coming down to do something, and he's saying, get up and do something, go and be a part. And so for me to know that, from 2005 chapel to 2025 now, that for the, half of that time, I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And then boom, this is what to do. Like, let's go and do something. It does change you. It literally, I don't like to run when it's below zero. I don't like to run with the snow. I have like snowboarding goggles that I wear. I've never snowboarded in my life, but I don't like to put those on and get them all fogged up and freeze, out there for however long. But like, I'm reminded every time I hear that text and, Exodus, that like, whoa, he's sending us out to do something because the captive needed to be set free. And so I'm with you, man. It resonates with what you said, Josiah. Like, it does something at the soul level. And if we can be people who don't sit idly by, but literally get up and move on God's behalf, wow. To sit down and hear from a survivor, she said to me it was this event she was speaking at, and she goes, "What you guys are doing at 30 for Freedom is saving girls' lives and changing their futures."
Right.
And I just remember thinking, like, whoa, like, from someone who's experienced crazy stuff, that's why we do it. That's what it's all about, so that people can be set free in Jesus' name.
Mm. The call today is the call of 30 for freedom is to move from comfortable. Like, we're in America, we're recording a podcast with some nice equipment,
Mm,
and we're in a heated home, and it's comfortable. And the call of 30 for freedom is to move from comfortable to less comfortable
yeah.
on behalf, for the sake of others, for God's glory, for the benefit of others. And it is chilling when you hear, where were you? What took you so long?
Mm,
I know that at different galas and things, we've heard Hannah, a survivor, her story. And
mm,
that moves me to see someone who now wants to be the prime minister of her country, and she's on her way.
hmm
And stories of transformation. This is a movement. This is a call. This is all hands on deck. We can all give. We can all run. We can all volunteer. We can all do something. And could you imagine, Brent, what, difference could be made if we all went from comfortable to less comfortable, took
mm,
steps of, what did Jesus talk about? A different type of fasting,
mm.
a different type of lifestyle with sacrifice,
Yeah.
a different call for the vulnerable and the oppressed. And it's beautiful.
Mm. So good, Josiah. Wow.
So good. Well, we're excited for all the things that God has. We'll be praying for you as friends that feel like family. So obviously 2025, I think, is going to be a big mile marker year for 30 for Freedom, and hopefully put some things into motion that, continue to get bigger and snowball as time goes on. And that's awareness, that's people getting involved. And yeah, any last minute thoughts that you want to share with our audience today? Maybe encouraging them. Maybe they feel like a couch potato and they're like, I have
Mm.
never ran a mile in my entire life. How can they start? What would you say to
Yeah.
encourage them to even just get involved on any level,
Yeah.
just to be a part of the bigger story?
That's so good. Funny that you asked that question. I'm actually writing a blog for Grandma's Marathon today about tips for beginners.
Yay.
And so just really quickly for the beginner, if you're thinking like couch to 5K, we've had several couch to 30 mile. I don't know that I'm not putting my stamp of approval on like everyone should do that, but we've had that.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, if you're like, hey, I'd like to move from comfortable to less comfortable on behalf of the poor and the oppressed and the vulnerable, I think one of the first things to do, at least this is how my brain works, like go to 30forfreedom.org and sign up to run. If you
Yep.
don't have a chapter near you, then you can sign up virtually and you can run a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, 30 miles on your own, wherever you are in the world. But as soon as I sign up for it, I'm like, oh man, it's real.
It's
Like I
real.
just paid for this. It's real. Second thing I would do is I would actually go to a running specialty store. And I understand there's people watching from all over the country in different countries, so that it may be easier for some people to access than others. But if you can go and get a gait analysis done, where they will, like the associate will watch you walk, they'll watch you run. They're like, oh, your feet strike the ground this way. So we recommend getting a shoe that's for stability, or we recommend a neutral shoe. They can actually help get your feet fitted for shoes that actually work for how your feet strike the ground. It's a game changer. And then I would just start on a training plan. But here's the thing that a lot of people do. They get really excited and it's awesome. They take that passion and they ramp their mileage up to like way, way too high. And then they get hurt. And then they're discouraged. And then
Mhm.
sometimes they don't end up running the race. So I would say like start slow, start small, and build slowly. They say like the 10% rule, and I know that's like we have the tithe, but it's a little bit different than that. But like they say, don't increase your mileage, weekly mileage, more than 10% a week. And so if someone can sign up, get fitted for shoes, and get on a training plan, building it slowly, that's what I'd say to get started.
It's great.
Man, would you say that, I mean, 15,000 participants so far in this movement, wouldn't you say that a good chunk of them were non-runners?
Oh yeah, I don't have the data to like say, but I would guess, especially for those who have done some crazy stuff like the 30 milers, the 60 milers, I would say that a lot of them, 40, 50% would not identify as a runner. They wouldn't
Mm.
say, hey, I'm a runner. They're like, I hate running. This is what I hear. I hate running. I hate sex trafficking more. That's the most common thing I've heard in the last 10
So
years.
good.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh.
Well, we've had people, I know it's kind of shifted and had to change due to our city limits and stuff like that with the permits, but we've had people rollerblade 30 miles, ride bike
Hmm.
30 miles here, row at a gym for 30 miles. Remember when Peter did that? I
Yep.
was like, he is going to be
Yep.
dead tomorrow. But I mean, he did it. I mean, and people are on the elliptical. So they've gotten very creative. So if you're doing
For
it
sure.
solo doesn't mean that you have to run uphill for 30 miles. It could be
Right.
a unique way of participating to track those miles. And Brent, with tracking of miles, we can link that with Venture, right? Because they have a certain app that you can download to truly like track your miles that are participating in the ultimate run. Is that correct? Is that
Yeah,
we
that's
could
a really
put in
good
there?
point. Yeah, so when someone registers for 30 for Freedom, they will get an email kicked back immediately from us where they can create their own fundraising page.
So cool.
And I would say most of the donations that we've seen 30 for Freedom are like the one time, hey, I'll give you $100, I'll give you, $500, $1,000, whatever it might be. But there are some that are like 30 miles, huh? I'll do $10 a mile. And so they can get a per mile pledge. The only way the per mile pledges actually go through is if they log their miles on the Venture
Yeah.
Miles app.
Yep.
And so there's all the instructions will be sent to them if they register for 30 for Freedom. But yeah, that can be a big deal, especially if you're doing something like 30 miles or you're doing something you've never done before.
I love it.
Incredible. Brent, you are a dear, dear friend, a
Mm,
frequent guest on Young Adults Today podcast. You're a part of our life, our really, I mean, family. It just
mm,
you're a brother to me, and
mm,
so grateful for you believing and breathing on the Young Adults Today podcast, the FYI podcast, the leader conferences, the weekend camp for young adults, and serving on the board of Young Adults Today. And
mm.
thanks for being that friend, that encourager, that person who has caught our back many, many, many times.
100%. Yeah, and just for the listener to know, one of the greatest investments that you could ever make in the whole world is investing in Mike and Josiah. And our family counts it a huge honor from day one to be able to be a part of that through our investing, through prayer. But for the listener who I listen to the podcast all the time. I'm always texting you like, oh man, I can't believe that what they said. That was so good. Um, Man, if you're someone who's benefiting from this, there's thousands of people that listen every week. Make young adults today, make that a line item in your budget and invest because Mike and Josiah are multiplying what God is doing in young adult ministry across the world, across the nation, and they're doing it locally as well. And it's beautiful. So I know yeah, you didn't ask me to say that. They didn't ask me to say that. That's just like straight up like, man, they are amazing and they are a phenomenal kingdom investment. ROI off the charts.
Oh man, well, we appreciate that and receive that. So we just want to say thank you so much. What do you want to say, Josiah? He's raising his hand.
I'm putting up 5 for the 5 and 5.
I would have
Let's
cut him
go.
off. Oh my gosh.
Let's go.
Should I kick it off?
Yes.
Okay, question number 1. Brent, what is your dream in a sentence?
So with leading 2 ministries, right? There's 2 different big dreams. Ending sex trafficking in our lifetime, 30 for freedom. The other one with regard to campus ministry is I truly want to see a true Holy Spirit revival across the college and university campuses in our world.
Amen.
Amen.
Mass baptisms, like let's go, like what, like
The time
let's
is
like
now.
they're ready. Let's go,
Yep.
you know?
May
Let it be
2025 be the year. That's incredible. Man, chills. Yep. Okay, so 7 marathons, 7 continents in 7 days. I mean, what's the greatest anticipation or what are you maybe most nervous or excited for? Which continent?
Yeah,
Because you've got like heat, humidity,
yeah.
you're talking about training in ice cold
Altitudes.
Minnesota. Yeah, it's
Elevation.
Yeah, so it goes Antarctica, south, then we go back to then we go to Cape Town, then Perth, then we go to Abu Dhabi, then we go to Portugal, Cartagena, Colombia on the equator. I heard that's the hardest one, and then Miami. And so starting in Antarctica, that's the one that's kind of tripped me out the most because I've interviewed several of the runners who just completed this in 2024. And they're like, there are things that you don't even know that you need to like understand about Antarctica. They're like, if you don't have lip protection, your lips will fry because of the way that the sun comes off the snow. If they're
Mhm.
sunny, it just beats down. They're like, people had their lips were like messed up the rest of the week. Eye protection, same type of a thing. And so Antarctica and Cartagena are my 2 like different ends of the spectrum as far as preparation. So I'm going to have some heat acclimation training I'll be doing this summer. The thing I'm most nervous for, though, honestly, is some kind of injury leading up to this event. And then like the flights, I'm nervous about that. You fly for over 60 of the hours of 168 hours.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
Wow.
crazy. I get
Yeah.
motion sick in a car. You know what I mean? Like
Oh my gosh.
comfortable to less comfortable. So yeah, those are the things I'm nervous about.
We'll be praying for that for sure. Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you.
Okay, so here is a curveball. If you could ask Josiah and I anything today, what would you want to know? You probably know a lot, but what would you want to know?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this question. I would love to know what are you currently like, what are you currently listening to or reading for each of you? And then I would also love to know if you have like a next book, if you have a title that's shareable. If it's not shareable, you don't need to share it.
Ooh, okay, you go first. I'm gonna grab my book over here and show people because I'm excited about this.
Let's go.
I read some on Kindle. I do some paperbacks and I do some like Spotify premium, Audible, whatever. But my reading right now, my most recent book that I just finished reading was The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt
Mm, mm.
and Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk. You know what? Like
Wow.
Geeking out, man.
for me, Brent, like I do a lot of like personal growth, leadership development, and even the anxious generation like
Mm.
scratches that itch to
Yeah.
understand things, to learn, to grow, to develop. So for me, I actually really love reading and listening. And so for me, that one, I remember like being 18 years old and hearing about this company called Tesla. And so to hear kind of the other side of that has been really, really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I think for me, I like listening to podcasts, but outside of leadership, outside of ministry is a fun escape for me. So I love listening to somebody, her name's Kathy Lip, and she talks about like decluttering your physical
Hmm.
space, what actually affects your soul and the implications of that. So just bringing organization to everyday life is something that I really geek out over for some reason. And I literally, when we were on our trip, got this book called Parenting and Navigating Everything. This guy
Hmm.
from Canada, literally, look at this book. It's huge.
Whoa.
And it literally touches on a practical handbook of parenting, covering topics of parenting styles,
Hmm.
progression of parenting, communication, discipline, discipleship, mental health, engaging in culture, media, loneliness, dating, pornography,
Wow.
sexuality. Like this guy, Brett Ullman, Ullman. I've watched some of his stuff on Right Now Media, and I was like, I have to get this book. Like this, from raising our own children to working with young adults,
Hmm.
just to understand all of that, will be super
Wow.
fun.
And yo, so back to you, Brent, is there a piece of like best advice that you received when you were a young adult that you'd want to share with maybe a listener or a viewer today?
Hmm. Yeah, this was a hard lesson to learn, to be honest, but it was one of the most important lessons that I learned as a young adult. I was struggling with the leader I was serving under, as there were certain promises that were made, and that it seemed to me at the time, from my perspective, that they were not being fulfilled. Hey, and I called my youth pastor. I called Ryan Skoog, and I said, what do I do? I am so disappointed. I feel like heartbroken. And he said, Brent, he has like that greatest like narrator voice. He's on the phone. He said, Brent, if you don't ever learn how to serve another person's ministry, how could God entrust you with a ministry to lead someday? He goes, take this time, humble yourself, and learn how to serve under someone else's leadership, even if you don't agree. And he said, and it will go well with you. And I remember I hung up the phone in the parking lot of Applebee's, and I was like, all right. It changed my perspective. It flipped the script for me. And so that piece of advice has served me well.
That's so good. It reminds me of the book How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. One of the
Yeah.
best books I've ever read. I'm like, this should have come out 10 years ago and it helped me so much. But obviously, timing is perfect. But the fifth and final question is, if you could encourage the listener with one piece of encouragement or advice, what would you want to give them today?
I would want every young adult leader, every young adult, every person to know before they step into a position, before they step into a role, before they put on their leadership hat, before they do all these things, you are known and you are seen by God. You are loved beyond anything you could possibly fully understand, ask, or imagine. And because of like who God has made you to be, you're created in the imago Dei, the image of God. You have infinite value and infinite worth. It's not attached to your job. It's not attached to your role. It's not because you're a pastor. It's not because you're a business owner. It's not because of any of those things. It's simply because of who God has made you to be. And so at the end of the day, you can lay your head down on your pillow and you can sleep easy at night knowing that you are beloved by God. After that, then you can do your stuff. Then you can, put your leadership hat on, do those things. But if you can come from a place of fully understanding that you're made in the image of God, that you are loved beyond anything in this world could ever explain, you are going to lead from a different place of contentment and a different place of security than you could ever try to than if you were trying to lean on something else that the world tries to offer. So be secure in Christ, be, and then you can be do the role that God's called you to do.
So good.
My goodness, I just read one of my favorite, you know, pastors, preachers, leaders to listen to and to read from is Levi Lusko. And
Hmm.
he does, pastors Fresh Life Church in Montana, which is amazing, but preaches at some stadium events. And after he preached at AT&T Stadium, he posted this and he goes, here's my prayer. He said this on Instagram. Levi said, here's my prayer when I start to find worth in my accomplishments. And he said, feel free to make it your own. He wrote, God, if you ever, no, sorry, God, if you never do anything through me again, you are all I need. If and when I can't preach or write or lead, you will be enough for me. When I can't run or fly or care for myself, you are enough
Hmm.
for me.
Hmm. Amen.
And Brent, pairing what you just said with what Levi posted it's easy to be on either end of the spectrum and find too much, for me, to find too much worth in maybe the tasks that God's placed before us as an assignment, or to find insecurity like Moses dealt with. Like, God, really me? Like, send somebody else. And I deal with both of those, believe it or not. And what you're saying of the Imago Day, and then recognizing that like God is enough for us. Wow. That's a great note to leave the listener with today. And we've got a little bit of a guest host with Avalon.
Avalon, hey. Love it.
But Brent, thanks so much for everything, man. We love you. We're cheering you and the movement of 30 for Freedom on.
Love you guys too. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on the pod with you.
Of course. Thank you so much. And we'll link everything in the show notes for 30 for Freedom so you can get involved as a listener and see what role you can play that is bigger than yourself and for God's kingdom. So check it out. This is the Young Adults Today podcast. Hey everybody, this is Micah with Young Adults Today. Just a couple reminders, as well as we have a March event. March 7th and 8th is our leadership conference. That's for people leading 18 to 30-year-olds, whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a pastor, or whether you're just passionate about young adults at large. We'd love to see you there.